Here is Ana Paula again. I hope you are all doing fine. Today I want to share with you something about a character in the Bible, in the Old Testament, named Laban. I don't know if you ever heard of him. His name is Laban. And what we are going to see is that he had a pattern of lying and deceiving. And so we can learn something from him, because this is many people think that they need to do whatever it takes to get what they want from life, so they lie, so they deceive people, even people from their own families. And what we can see from Laban's life is that this is always something that will have terrible consequences. You destroy yourself, you destroy your family, and those so important things, usually money, will destroy you also as well. So the best option is always to trust God to take care of you and to behave in a way that honors God. But let's talk about him. You probably have never heard of him, but you probably have heard of Jacob. And this is, so they are related. Laban was Jacob's uncle. So here we have Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob and Esau, the brothers, the twin brothers. Esau the older, the one that was born before, and then Jacob. And we can't go through their story, but maybe you remember that at some point Jacob deceived his own father, pretending that he was Esau. Isaac was kind of blind, and Jacob presented himself to his father as if he was Esau, the older brother, to receive a blessing. And Isaac gave him the blessing, thinking that he was Esau. And when Esau found out what Jacob have done, he was really mad, and he wanted to kill his brother. And so what happened was that Rebekah had an idea and said to Jacob, her son, flee, go away, go to my family. So they were leaving Isaac, Rebekah, and their children, Jacob and Esau. They live here in what is nowadays Israel. And Rebekah's family and Laban, her brother. So Laban was Rebekah's brother. He was the uncle of Jacob and Esau. He lived here up in the north, where today would be probably Syria. So Rebekah said, Jacob, go to my family, travel, go away, and with time, Esau will get calmer, will forget about all of this, and then you can get back. And this is what Jacob did. So he went in a long trip, to be with his family, with his mother's family here, really. And so he got there. So Jacob got there, and he met his uncle, Laban, and his two daughters, Leah and Rachel. Okay, so Laban had two daughters, and all of this is registered in Genesis 29 and in the following chapters. And so he went there. Jacob arrived there, and he met Laban, his uncle, and his cousins, Rachel and Leah. And at the beginning, he was working, and so he went there to visit. Well, not really visit. He stayed there at the end for 20 years. So can you imagine being a guest in your uncle's house for 20 years? So Jacob stayed there for 20 years. But at that point in the beginning, he was not imagining he would be there for such a long time. But anyway, he went there. He was a young man, and so he started to work to help his uncle Laban. And Laban said, well, you are going to work for me, fine. So let's make a deal. How much you want to receive as a salary? And Jacob said, I don't want a salary. I want to marry Rachel, your daughter. And at that time, and to be very true to you, till very recently, till the 19th century, it was okay for cousins to marry among them. So Jacob and Rachel and Leah, they were cousins. And Jacob was in love with Rachel at first sight, let's say. And he wanted to marry Rachel. And it was very common at those days, and also today in some places in the world, that the groom was supposed to pay for the family of the bride, to pay some money for the family of the bride. Well, Jacob didn't have money, but he could work. And so it was a kind of payment. And so Laban agreed to that deal. And so they established, and Laban proposed that Jacob worked for 7 years to get to marry Rachel. And Jacob agreed. So it was kind of crazy to work for 7 years. So 7 years of wage that Jacob was paying pretty much to be able to marry to Rachel, but he agreed. And so they did that. And so Jacob worked. He worked in the farm, taking care of the flock, so sheep, goats. This was the kind of work he was doing, and for 7 years. Okay, after 7 years, the wedding happened. But and this comes the first great deceiving, the first great lying that Laban did. You probably have seen around pictures or movies in different cultures from ours where in the wedding the bride is pretty much all covered with a heavy veil, and you really can't see who is there, who is the bride. So this was pretty much how it works at those times. And what Laban did was the following. He, instead of giving Rachel to marry Jacob, he gave Leah. Okay, so Leah was all covered up in these bride dresses and in this heavy veil, and she was given in the place of her sister by their father to Jacob. And why did Laban do that? Because he knew that Jacob was in love with Rachel, and that he would work more years if required to get Rachel. And so he lied and deceived not only Jacob, his own daughters. Can you imagine how Leah felt? So he was not the one that Jacob wanted to marry to. She was the older, and this was Laban's argument later. And she was not the one that Jacob wanted to marry to. But her father forced her to go disguised as the bride. And so when Jacob, after the wedding and after the wedding night, he found out that he was married not to Rachel, to Leah. This may sound crazy, and this is crazy, but if you imagine, people would go to their wedding night, they were all dressed up, they were probably a little drunk, and so he didn't realize who was the girl, his wife, and in the morning he realized that it was Leah and not Rachel. So can you imagine how awful the situation was to Jacob, to Leah, and to Rachel too? Well, Jacob was very mad, and he went to Laban and asked, "Are you crazy? What are you doing? Why did you give me Leah instead of Rachel?" And Laban came with a very, very stupid stories saying, oh no, here in our place, in our country, here in our culture, you need to marry the oldest daughter first, and then you can marry the younger one. But if you want Rachel, you can work 7 more years for her. So can you notice what Laban did was to try to exploit Jacob, to try to use his daughters to get more free work from Jacob. And here we need to do some application because in our society sometimes you have people doing precisely that, trying to deceive, trying to lie, to get what? To get more money. And these you are gonna see. Can you imagine what kind of relationship Laban had with Jacob from that point to the future, or what kind of relationship he could have with his own daughters who were used and deceived by their father so that he could have more money and could have someone working for him for free for more 7 years. So it destroyed the family, pretty much. It destroyed the family. Well, Jacob agreed to work 7 more years to marry Rachel, okay? And so now they have this family with 2 wives, so Rachel and Leah. And it was a problem. It always was to have 2 wives, but it all started with Laban. So Laban destroyed his relationship with his family, and he also caused a lot of trouble to his own daughters that went into a marriage with the same man, and they were kind of fighting all the time. Okay, so this was the first huge lying and deceiving movement from Laban, but it more would come. After the 14 years that Jacob worked for Laban in return for his 2 wives, Leah and then Rachel, Jacob said, okay, fine, now I worked the 14 years you asked for, now I'm going home. 14 years, I'm going home. But then Laban said, no, don't go home. Let's now make a different deal. You keep working for me, but now let's make a deal, and I will pay you for your work. And Laban was very interested in Jacob's work because the Bible says that everything that Jacob did, God would bless. So even though his uncle Laban would try to deceive him, God was blessing him. So this we can get an application for us too. Let's keep being faithful to God, even though people may deceive us, even though people may lie to us, even though people may wrong us. Let's keep our hearts and our minds faithful to God. He will take care of us. And God did take care of Jacob. He did not block Laban's actions, but God protected Jacob in the midst of the lying and deceiving from his uncle. So what happened next? Laban said, no, stay here for a while. Now we can make a deal on wages for you. Now you have paid for my daughters. Now we can make a deal about your wages. And Jacob said, okay, let's do that. But I don't want wages. I'm gonna do this following. I take care of your flocks. Fine. So my wages will be all the stained, the spotted flocks. Okay, so just for you guys to have an idea, the most common sheep, for instance, is one color. They are sometimes a little, they look as if they have dust or something like that, but they have one color. Stained, something like that, or is not that common, okay? But Jacob was trusting God, and so Jacob proposed this. Okay, my wages will be all the sheep that are stained, spot, or something like that. And Laban thought, great, that's good. That this guy's not very smart, because most of the sheep are one color, and so he agreed. But what happened was that after they agreed that, God blessed Jacob, and a lot of sheep were born stained and spotted. And Laban saw that, and he changed the rule. So no. Now it's not, the stains are not yours anymore. Now the stains are mine, and the one color are yours. And so he did that. But the moment he did that, he changed the rule. He changed what they had agreed before. God started to bless Jacob, and now only one color sheep were being born. And when Laban saw that Jacob's flock was growing because God was helping and blessing, and his own flock was diminishing, he changed again the rule. And so no, now only the stripped is yours. Okay, it's very rare, as you probably know, a goat in this case is a goat, a stripped. And the point is that Laban changed Jacob's wage, what they had agreed, 10 times. Each time he agreed, and then God blessed Jacob, and he was full of envy, and he changed. So he tried to deceive, and he tried to change the rules to have more benefit and to make Jacob lose. But at the end, God each time blessed Jacob, and he was becoming richer and richer than Laban. And after 6 years, so he stayed there at total 20 years. 14 years he worked for the girls, and then 6 years he worked for this kind of wage in sheep. So it was not money, it was the sheep that were going to change hands. And so after 6 years, Jacob decided it's time to go. We cannot live with Laban anymore. Let's go back to my place, so where his father and mother were, and where his brother Esau was. So and they did that. And at this moment, when they were leaving Laban's place, the two Laban's daughters, Jacob's wives, all their children, they had many children at this point, and all their flocks, Laban tried to go after them, and it looks from the Bible that he was going to make kind of a conflict, a war against Jacob and his family. But the Bible says that God showed up to Laban and said, don't do anything against Jacob. Don't say anything harsh to Jacob. Refrain yourself to do this. And God intervened, and Jacob was able to go back to his place, to his family, with his own family and his own flock after 20 years of being with Laban. What can we learn? How Laban ended? He ended alone. He ended without his daughters, without his grandchildren, and with much less of his fortune and his flocks than he had before. Why? Because he was so full of greedy, and he was trying to make his way in life by deceiving, by lying, by envying people. And this is very common nowadays, okay? So this is a node text, a node culture, but the motivations of people are pretty much the same we have today. So people are still thinking that they can that the most important thing is money, and that they should do whatever it takes, including lying, including deceiving, including envy, including making the most to destroy competitors to get more. And what we learn is that God is against those kind of peoples, that at the end, money is not important at all. Not only at the end, at the middle, at the way. You can have money and you can be alone, and you can have a family destroyed, and you can have really an empty soul, because all you were worshiping was money, was what the word says is important, but what the word says is important is not important. What is really important is what God says. So Laban is a very sad character in the Old Testament, but is a character that helps us to be aware of how deceiving is to be so much attracted to what the word thinks is success, to money, to success, to prosperity, financial prosperity, that we should take care of this and go for what the Bible says is really the important thing. So to honor God in whatever we do, in our businesses, in our work. Now you guys are starting to work, so remember that, honor God and be honest, clear to people in your work, and honor God in whatever you do. And it does not mean that people will not deceive you. This is not a guarantee that you'll be protected from deceiving, from lying, from people wronging you. No, but God will be with you. God will take care of you. God will guide you. And this is the really important thing, that God may bless us to apply this story and these examples to our lives. Thank you, guys. See you.